Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome to Rise. You're in the right place. Today's video is a crash course on intimacy. What is it and how to bring more into your life? So we can call this intimacy now. Today we're going to talk about intimacy while I'm prepping for lunch, while I'm making some carrots. So there are three types of intimacy. There's physical intimacy, there's emotional intimacy, and there's intellectual intimacy. I think one of the most important types of intimacy is emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy involves a feeling of safety and trust and this vulnerability where you can actually share yourself with someone. And I was just thinking, if you don't really take time to know who you are, it's going to be really difficult to develop intimacy with another person. So, a really important part to developing emotional intimacy with other people is to be able to know who you are, know what makes you happy, and actually take the time to understand your stories and what's gone on in your life so that when you do meet somebody that you care about, you can share that story. It like kind of comes naturally. And then there's this wonderful thing called active listening, where the other person who's capable of intimacy is able to take that in, what you've said, and understand it and maybe reflect it back to you in a new way or add their thoughts to it. And that is a really wonderful experience. That's emotional intimacy. We've also got physical intimacy. Physical intimacy is profound. Physical intimacy, I mean, makes us have families. It is what keeps the human race going. And it also, whoops, we got a little peel there. It perpetuates, feelings of closeness and family building. So the thing about physical intimacy is it involves consent. You want to be close to this person. You want to feel their touch. In fact, a hug from them secretes something in your brain called oxytocin, which is a really wonderful bonding and love hormone. And we all need that because it induces relaxation. It helps us deal with stress and cortisol. Physical intimacy really reduces stress in a person's life. So it's good for you, it's good for the other person, and it's good for families. You know, holding hands when you're at the park, or even say, a group hug after a stressful event can go a long way in a family. There's the last type of intimacy, but you know what? There's probably a long list of different types of intimacy. But the last one we're going to talk about is intellectual intimacy. And you'll find that in friends and in couples who share the same occupation. For example, they may be like molecular biologists or doctors or chefs. They share the same passions. They may really enjoy trying different restaurants or a passion for recipes, something that is shared, like a hobby or an occupation or an interest, like maybe bird watching. You can get really close to someone when you share your hobby with them. Like if you enjoy different types of bird songs, discussing it with someone and hearing what they think will really enrich your point of view. And that feeling is an intimate feeling. So there are three types of intimacy that we're going to talk about: the intellectual, the physical, and the emotional. So let's go back to emotional intimacy, because that seems to be kind of an important topic right now in the world. And it seems like it's difficult to create, it's difficult to feel close, to feel like people hear you, or to feel seen in the world. I think there's a real deficit of knowing how to be emotionally intimate. Some of the roadblocks that I see is an inability to listen. We live in such a distracted culture. You got to be able to tell it like it is in 10 seconds. Otherwise, you've lost the attention. But when we're going deep, when we're talking about our emotional truths, our emotional lives, it kind of takes a slower rhythm and with some pauses and maybe even some sighs or just some tears even. But so the ability to sit and to listen is a really important skill to cultivate in order to get more intimacy in your life. I guarantee if you sit with someone and you're engaged with them with your phone off, you will take the time to get there and cultivate the emotional intimacy that will make you feel better and make the other person feel better. And it's a tremendous skill. It's bonding, it's enriching, and it also adds a lot to your understanding of the world. Another thing I think we need to know when we're developing our skills for emotional intimacy, we need to know about ourselves. We need to have something to share about ourselves. It's really interesting. People, when you ask them what they love, who they are, what defines them, they pause. It's really difficult to stop and think about yourself. Now, I'm not talking about narcissism. Wow, look at this carrot. This carrot looks, well, it's organic, so a bug must have gotten it. But what I'm talking about is like the ability to know, hey, I feel angry right now. When I'm in traffic and it's stop and go, I get angry. To really be honest about that. Or, it was really painful for me to go through the holidays last year. Everybody else was having a great time, but I was having memories. So that's the ability to be real with yourself instead of just like, yay, it's the holidays, I'm going to go along with everybody else. I mean, if you do, sure, you will, but it's not going to be the most emotionally intimate holiday season. So the other thing about emotional vulnerability or emotional intimacy, I'm ahead of myself, is the capacity for vulnerability. And that capacity for vulnerability, I think it requires a bit of self-acceptance. Like, this is me. Sometimes things aren't that easy for me, or sometimes I have really strong feelings. And when you can go into the world and communicate that in a received way, not like all over the place screaming or crying with high drama, but communicate it in an effective way, you will feel understood, you will feel heard, and you will bring more intimacy into your life and into another person's life. So, emotional vulnerability. We could talk, we probably should have another talk video on physical intimacy because so many people are physical but not intimate, and that can lead to chronic feelings of emptiness and dissatisfaction and sadness. But we'll save that for another time. Let's talk about intellectual intimacy. I think everybody is really interested, or I'm biased, I think everybody is really interested in psychology and the workings of their mind and neuroscience because it really defines our experience. So I consider everybody, kind of an amateur neuroscientist, psychologist, psychiatrist. So I often meet people who are very interested in psychology and the meanings behind stories, the meanings, cultural traditions, in a psychological way. So I think everybody is an amateur psychologist, psychiatrist. Whoops, that was loud. I think everybody is an amateur neuroscientist, psychiatrist. We're all eager to know more about who we are and what defines our experiences. So it's easy for me to develop some sort of intellectual intimacy with different people I meet who are active listeners and take the time for meaningful conversations during the day. One really interesting conversation pops into my mind, and I felt really intimate after this conversation. Like, this person knew that I was vulnerable, listened to me, I felt close to them, I felt understood, and I actually was able to take in more of the story after listening. But anyway, we were talking about the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So, one of my children, when they were really young, opened the door after hearing the Goldilocks story and yelled out the front door, "Goldilocks, get out of here!" Slammed the door and ran back to the room. So I thought that was a very interesting reaction. "Goldilocks, get out of here." The person I was talking to, a friend of mine, said, "Oh, yeah, that's very interesting. Your son didn't identify with the adventure spirit in Goldilocks. They actually wanted to protect their home. And what they understood of the story was Goldilocks was an intruder. Keep her out of the house. So my friend said, well, you know what? I always loved Goldilocks. I love the story of Goldilocks because she's an adventurer. She would go out and she would find new places, and she had no problem going to the bear's house. And then I took the time to listen. I said, okay, well, the story of Goldilocks always kind of made me sad because Goldilocks would just go into the house, came into the three bears' house, and found the hot porridge, the cold porridge, and then the just right porridge, and ate all of baby bear's porridge. Then Goldilocks goes and sits on the different chairs. One's too hard, one's too soft, one's just right. She sits in it. It's baby bear's chair. She breaks the chair. Then she goes upstairs and she takes a nap. Of course, she takes it in baby bear's bed. And the bears come home. Baby bear finds he has no porridge left. His chair is broken. And look, there's this strange person in his bed. So, I was talking to my friend and I'm like, you know what? I always felt bad for baby bear. I just felt bad. Now, there is nothing I'm trying to prove in this story, but just sharing this interest in understanding a well-loved storybook story, that children love, and through the generations, why do we love it so much? Bit of folklore. Understanding our personal points of view, it brought us closer. We had a good laugh, and I'll tell you what, I don't think we're going to forget that conversation. So that's a little bit of my story time for intimacy. And maybe in this segment on intimacy now, when we talk like this, via the YouTube channel Rise, we're able to develop some sort of intimacy. If you feel it, write it down in the comments. There are pros and cons to this because you're listening and having feelings, and I'd love to know what's coming up for you. And the other thing is the skills to develop intimacy. We need to become active listeners. We need to put our phones down and make the time to listen to somebody in our lives, whether that's our child, our best friend, our spouse, our colleagues, our neighbors. And it's also our responsibility to say, hey, I don't have the time right now, but to circle around and make some time to develop and foster this emotional intimacy. We also have to do that for the physical intimacy. We also have to do that for our intellectual intimacy and develop hobbies and passions that go beyond our work or our school, that add more to our lives. And when we share that with other people, that creates this richness and intimacy. And then again, we have to be able to have some self-acceptance. In order to be truly intimate, we need to accept all the parts of ourselves and work on that either with friends or in therapy, and be able to verbalize and process and share with other people. The more you're able to do that, the more you're able to bring people close to you, people who mean something to you, people who make you feel good. So developing the capacity for intimacy is greatly going to enhance your life. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye for now. See you soon.